So you've all heard it by now, the Band of Air is getting nerfed. It is a ring that has a 10% chance whenever you deal damage to trigger an effect which deals 600 magnitude damage that cannot crit. And based on that, you were essentially getting an additional hit of some big encounter power every time that would proc. And so we could create our builds surrounding this ring to essentially get as many of those hits as possible. You look at encounter powers on a rogue, all of them are around 700 to 800 magnitude. So something that can deal 600 magnitude and can proc up to once every second is pretty crazy. On a rogue, we have a lot of dots which can proc the Band of Air. A lot of fast hitting attack powers that can cause this effect to trigger very rapidly. Every few seconds you could at least get the Band of Air to hit an additional time. And this was leading to a gain of up to 20% extra damage on a good fight. Here's a rogue fight within Crown of Keldagon. It's pretty much to date the highest amount of encounter DPS I've gotten in that first phase. And you can see 19% was the touch of wind, and that's the Band of Air. How much is this ring actually going to be reduced by in its effectiveness? That is what I'm here to figure out. So far, we know that they have said they're going to fix the ring.
We were looking at Band of Air. We will be fixing the fact that it procs off procs.
Apparently, it was unintentional that things like Mythalar, that the Lost Mouth set, that the Poison Thorn, those things which are causing essentially extra procs based on what things you do. For example, I hit a target and then I would gain that extra proc if I have combat advantage against the target from the Mythalar. So that would be my extra hit. And if I were to critically hit, I would gain the extra hit from the Lost Mouth set, from the 3 journals. And on top of that, then you'd have your Poison Thorn ticking off as well. And basically the Band of Air could proc on each of those hits. So essentially when you would hit your dummy and you'd have just the Mythalar set, then you'd essentially hit the dummy twice for the equivalent of actually only 1 hit, and that's twice as more likely to proc your Band of Air. And we were using multiple different things. The 3 storyteller books was also really good here. You have all 3 of those and you get the additional hit, Poison Thorn. So those are the 3 main factors that pretty much any class could use to proc the Band of Air: Mythalar, 3 storybooks, and Poison Thorn. Aside from that, many classes will have different powers that can be used to proc the Band of Air, and that's all class specific. I don't know how much they're going to go into each class, but I'm going to assume their first pass is going to be essentially prevent any of these extra things, these gear pieces, from being able to proc the Band of Air. So with that in mind, what's going to happen to the damage output of the Band of Air? Is it going to become like next to useless to use? Are you going to want to run a better ring? Right now we can pick up with the next module, the Soothsayer's ring, giving 7% crit strike. And this could be better than the Band of Air just through the base damage it grants you through your stats. It will increase your stats, which increases your overall damage of your daily powers, encounters, at-wills, and all that good stuff. Whereas you could use the Band of Air and you would just get an additional hit. Rather than increasing your overall damage of your other powers, you're just getting an effect to deal separate damage. Looking at the way it currently stands, the Band of Air is absolutely best in stock, up to 20% extra damage on a rogue, which I'm pretty sure is one of the classes that can make the most of Band of Air, including like a warlock. Wizards can do pretty good there as well. We can see that here with a log from a wizard, up to 18% from touch of wind, and on a warlock also up to 18% from touch of wind. And so I went and made some simple tests. What if I go and remove the Mythalar? I switch out Mythalar like I just did. I switch out Poison Thorn to Cursed Burn, which can't proc the Band of Air, so I still get the item level and the base 10% extra damage. And I switch out the books so that I don't have yet all 3 of them. So I don't have that. So all 3 of those effects are gone. I no longer have 3 extra hits every time I essentially hit my target. That's a massive reduction to the amount of chances I have to proc the Band of Air. But what does that equate to then? Well, we can have a look at our tests. So here's my test right here where I'm using everything I possibly can. We have our raw pressure from Mithilar, we have our poison thorn, we have then our lost mouth vengeance, and you can see the amount of hits you're getting there. It's a significant amount, and that then results in Band of Air proccing nearly every once per second there, over 9-minute tests, 390 hits, and we go and compare that then against a log where we remove all of those benefits, and we have this just here. We can see we don't have raw pressure, we don't have lost mouth vengeance, and we don't have poison thorn. You have poison there, that's a rogue ability. Again, just not going class specific, we're keeping all of those abilities for now. You can see Touch of Wind has gone down to 55,000 encounter DPS. DPS is what you want to use to judge your damage per second, so that it doesn't matter how long your duration of your test is, you will still be able to compare, because you're looking at the average damage per second, which from Touch of Wind is 55,000. We look at our other test where we use everything, we get up to 88,000, nearly 89,000 encounter DPS on Touch of Wind. Look at it on a chart and we can compare that here. Our current damage without any nerfs is 89,000 encounter DPS on our Band of Air. After we go and nerf that by removing the ability for procs to proc the Band of Air, we're getting that reduced down to 55,000 encounter DPS. That is nearly a 40% damage reduction on your Band of Air. That's pretty massive, which means overall, if your Band of Air was dealing 20% of your damage, which is pretty crazy for just one ring, you're losing nearly 8% total damage of your build. So we would look at a log like this one here from Crown of Keldagon, nearly 1 million encounter DPS. We can see that Touch of Wind was nearly 200,000 encounter DPS, over 19% of my damage, and so I'll be taking a hit of, as you can see again by this chart, nearly 8% damage loss. So I'll be going down to maybe about 11% on my Touch of Wind. I'll be losing at least that 80,000 encounter DPS, meaning I'd only be at maybe 900,000 encounter DPS here instead. That doesn't actually look like too bad, and the ring overall is still going to deal massive amounts. It's still overall more than 10% of your damage output on your character, which is good, and that's essentially what we were getting when you weren't using the Mithilar set, and that's going to essentially be the new standard until they go into class specific things. But yeah, at least for a rogue, that will be an overall nerf of about 40% of the damage reduction to the Band of Air. Does this make the Band of Air not so good anymore? Is it no longer best in slot if that changes? No, it will still be best in slot. Keep in mind, this is again on a rogue. It can be different for many different classes. You may have one class in particular, looking at you, Arbiter Cleric, where yeah, it may just be not worth having a Band of Air because you don't have a lot of hits that can proc it then if all you're relying on is your class abilities. It's going to make the Band of Air a lot more beneficial for classes which have their own abilities to proc it extra, and so you're still going to have a lot of class imbalance. So again, with that said, it will still be best in slot ring for many classes, and a rogue in particular, until they potentially go and look at the rogue itself, its powers, and mess around with those. I hope they don't, but we shall see. And of course I say that because I play a rogue. Yes, obviously. So with that said, hope you presented this well. If I did, consider leaving the video a like, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.